When I took this office as your Secretary of Health and Human Services, I made a promise. I said we would expose the truth about what is making Americans sick. I said we would follow the science wherever it leads, even when that science points directly at the corporations that fund our regulatory agencies. Today, I need to talk to you about something that should make every parent in this country furious. We are poisoning our babies, not metaphorically, literally. And a congressional report proved it. In 2021, a House Oversight Subcommittee released a report with a title that should have stopped this nation in its tracks. It was called Baby Foods Are Tainted with Dangerous Levels of Arsenic, Lead, Cadmium, and Mercury. These are not fringe additives. These are heavy metals. These are bioaccumulative toxins that do not leave the body. They settle into developing brains, into growing bones, into tiny nervous systems. And we have been spooning them into our children's mouths, trusting the labels, trusting the FDA, trusting the system. That trust was betrayed. The subcommittee demanded internal documents from baby food manufacturers. What they found was devastating. These companies knew they had the testing data. They knew their products contained dangerous levels of toxic heavy metals, and they sold them anyway. Some of these products were marketed as organic. Some of them had pictures of smiling babies on the packaging. Some of them sat on your kitchen counter last week. Let me give you the numbers, because the numbers are what the agencies do not want you to see. Nurture, the company that makes Happy Baby products, sold foods containing arsenic levels up to 180 parts per billion. Let me put that in context. The FDA limit for arsenic in bottled water is 10 parts per billion. We are talking about baby food with arsenic concentrations 18 times higher than what we allow in water. And it gets worse. Some of their products tested at arsenic levels 91 times higher than the bottled water standard. This is not contamination. This is systemic poisoning. Beechnut, a brand that has been feeding American babies for over 90 years, used ingredients with lead levels reaching 886.9 parts per billion. Let that number settle into your mind. The FDA has not set a limit for lead in baby food. You know what the limit is in Europe? 4 times lower than what the FDA allows in candy. And we are talking about baby food. We are talking about the most vulnerable population on earth. Infants whose blood-brain barriers are not fully formed. Infants whose neurological development happens in real time with every meal. Hain Celestial, the company behind Earth's Best Organic, sold products with lead levels over 300 parts per billion. This is a company that charges premium prices because parents believe organic means safe. Parents believe organic means tested. Parents believe organic means someone is watching. Nobody was watching. The FDA was not watching. The FDA does not require baby food manufacturers to test their finished products for heavy metals. Let me say that again, because it is almost too absurd to believe. The agency tasked with protecting the American food supply does not require companies to test baby food for toxic metals before they put it on the shelf. Gerber, the most trusted name in baby food for generations, had products with arsenic levels at 67 parts per billion and lead at 48 parts per billion. Their own internal standards allowed up to 90 parts per billion of lead in some ingredients. 90 parts per billion. The American Academy of Pediatrics says there is no safe level of lead exposure for children. None. Zero. Any amount of lead causes measurable neurological harm. And Gerber set their internal limit at 90. Campbell Soup Company, which sells baby food under various brands, set internal lead standards at 60 parts per billion. But here is what the subcommittee discovered. Campbell did not even test all their ingredients. They told Congress they test less than a quarter of their finished baby food products, less than 25%. The other 75% goes directly to store shelves, directly into shopping carts, directly into baby bottles, untested. Walmart's Parents' Choice brand sold baby food with no heavy metal testing at all. None. Zero internal standards. Zero testing protocols. They relied entirely on their suppliers. They trusted the system. The same broken, captured, corrupted system that we are dismantling right now at HHS. Sprout Organic Foods refused to cooperate with the congressional investigation entirely. They would not turn over their internal documents. They would not disclose their testing results. When a company refuses to show you what is in their baby food, I want you to ask yourself why. What are they hiding? What is in those jars that they do not want Congress to see? This brings me to the fundamental question that every American should be asking. How did this happen? How did we end up in a country where baby food contains more arsenic than bottled water and nobody stopped it? The answer is corporate capture. The answer is what I have spent 40 years of my career fighting against. The regulatory agencies that are supposed to protect us have been captured by the industries they regulate. The FDA has known about heavy metals in baby food for decades. In 2016, the FDA tested baby foods and found arsenic, lead, and cadmium in every single product they sampled. Every single one. 100% contamination rate. And what did they do with that information? They sat on it. They did not issue mandatory standards. They did not require testing. They did not recall products. They did nothing. Because the FDA does not work for you. The FDA works for the companies it is supposed to regulate. That is corporate capture. That is the incestuous relationship between regulators and industry that has made Americans the sickest population in the developed world. Look at what happens in Europe. The European Union sets strict limits on heavy metals in baby food. Their arsenic limit for rice-based baby food is 100 parts per billion, with lower limits for infant formulas. They set cadmium limits, they set lead limits, they require testing, they enforce standards, and what does the FDA do? The FDA issues guidance documents, voluntary recommendations, suggestions that companies can ignore without consequence. In 2024, the FDA proposed limits that would not even be fully enforced until 2026, 5 years after Congress exposed the problem. 5 years of poisoned babies while the agency drafted paperwork. The science is clear. Lead exposure in infancy causes permanent IQ reduction. We know this from decades of research. Even low-level lead exposure is associated with attention deficits, behavioral problems, and learning disabilities. The CDC estimates that at least 4 million households have children exposed to high lead levels. Arsenic exposure is linked to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and immune dysfunction. The World Health Organization classifies arsenic as a Group 1 carcinogen. We are feeding a known carcinogen to infants. Cadmium accumulates in the kidneys and causes organ damage. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin that disrupts brain development. And all 4 of these metals were found in commercial baby food at levels that would be illegal in Europe. This is why American children are sicker than children anywhere else in the developed world. This is why autism rates have skyrocketed. This is why ADHD diagnoses have exploded. This is why learning disabilities are now commonplace. We are not dealing with genetic changes. Genes do not change in one generation. We are dealing with environmental poisoning. We are dealing with a chronic disease epidemic that starts in the high chair. The heavy metals in baby food come from multiple sources, but one of the primary culprits is contaminated soil. Rice, which is used in many baby cereals, absorbs arsenic from the soil at 10 times the rate of other grains. Much of our rice is grown in fields that were formerly cotton plantations, where arsenic-based pesticides were used for decades. That arsenic is still in the soil. It gets into the rice. It gets into the baby food. It gets into your child. But here is what the agencies will not tell you. We knew this. The USDA knew this. The EPA knew this. The FDA knew this. And they allowed baby food manufacturers to keep using rice from contaminated fields because regulating it would hurt corporate profits. That is the calculus. Shareholder returns versus infant brain development, and shareholders won. I want you to understand something about how this industry operates. These are not small family businesses making baby food in their kitchens. These are multinational corporations with armies of lawyers, lobbyists, and public relations specialists. When the congressional report came out, do you know what they did? They did not apologize. They did not recall their products. They launched a public relations campaign. They said the heavy metals were naturally occurring. They said the levels were safe. They said they were working on solutions. 3 years later, they are still working on solutions while your children are still eating poison. The infant formula industry alone generates over $50 billion annually worldwide. The baby food market in the United States is worth over $8 billion. These companies spend millions lobbying Congress and the FDA. They fund the research that the agencies rely on to set standards. They employ former FDA officials in their executive suites. They write the regulations that are supposed to govern them. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. This is how the system actually works. And let me tell you what happens when someone tries to change it. When Consumer Reports published their investigation into heavy metals in baby food, the industry attacked their methodology. When Healthy Babies Bright Futures released their testing data showing toxic metals in 95% of baby foods tested, the industry questioned their science. When Congress held hearings, the industry sent lawyers instead of answers. They delay, they obfuscate, they run out the clock, because every day they delay is another day of profits. Every year without mandatory standards is another year of selling contaminated products without consequence. This is the machine we are fighting against. This is why I left my career in environmental advocacy to take this position. This is why the Make America Healthy Again movement matters. We are not just reforming policy, we are breaking the stranglehold that corporations have on the agencies that regulate them. We are ending decades of institutional corruption that has made profit more important than children's health. We are changing this. My department is reviewing every baby food standard. We are pushing the FDA to implement mandatory testing requirements immediately. Not in 2026, not through voluntary guidance, but now we are examining whether criminal referrals are appropriate for companies that knowingly sold contaminated products, knowingly, because the congressional report proved they knew. They had the internal test results. They made business decisions to sell products that exceeded their own internal limits. Now, let me tell you what you can do, because we cannot wait for the agencies to act. First, reduce rice-based baby foods. Rice cereals were once considered the gold standard for first foods. They are not. Oatmeal, barley, and other grains absorb far less arsenic. Switch your baby to non-rice alternatives. Second, make your own baby food when possible. Whole fruits and vegetables that you puree at home are going to have lower heavy metal contamination than processed products. It takes more time, it takes more effort, but your child's brain is worth that effort. Third, demand transparency. Contact these companies, ask for their heavy metal testing results, ask what their internal limits are. If they will not tell you, do not buy their products. Fourth, look at the sourcing. Where are the ingredients coming from? What soil are they grown in? Companies that practice regenerative agriculture, that test their soil, that know their supply chain, those are the companies that deserve your trust. Fifth, diversify what you feed your baby. Do not rely on any single product or brand. Variety reduces the risk of cumulative exposure to any single contaminant. The more different foods you rotate through, the less likely you are to build up dangerous levels of any one toxin. There are companies doing this right. There are small manufacturers committed to testing every batch. There are brands that source ingredients from uncontaminated soils. There are producers practicing regenerative agriculture that actually improve soil health rather than poisoning it. Seek them out. Support them with your dollars. Your grocery purchases are votes. Vote for companies that respect your children's health. We are at a turning point in American history. 54% of American children now have a chronic health condition. That number was in the single digits in the 1,960 seconds. Something changed. It was not genetics. It was our food supply. It was our regulatory agencies. It was a system designed to protect corporate profits instead of public health. I came to Washington to change that system. My department is going to change that system. But I need you to understand what is at stake. Every jar of baby food that sits on a store shelf without mandatory testing represents a failure of government. Every congressional report that gets buried and forgotten represents a failure of accountability. Every baby who eats lead and arsenic with their morning cereal represents a betrayal of the most basic social contract. We are supposed to protect our children. Our government is supposed to protect our children. For decades, it has done the opposite. This ends now. We are going to clean this up. We are going to hold these companies accountable. We are going to reform these agencies so that they serve the public instead of the industries they regulate. But I need you to be part of this movement. Share this information with every parent you know. Demand better from the companies that feed your family. Demand better from the politicians who oversee these agencies. Make America healthy again is not a slogan. It is a necessity. It is survival. And it starts with protecting the most vulnerable among us. It starts with what we feed our babies.